Iya! 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 Fengri Maglonov Cthulhu Elia were got no gul for tagen. Iya! 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 The old ones were, the old ones are, and the old ones shall be. Fengri Maglonov Cthulhu Eliach were got no gul for tagen. By a foulness shall ye know them. Their hands are at your throats, and yet ye see them not. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die. Fengui Maglonov Cthulhu Eliach Wagot Nugul Fatagen. Iya! 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 May this sacrifice be acceptable. This symbol shall protect me for a while. Look away! There you are, my playthings. In your tortured ears, sounds unceasing, a nightmare, a distant baying as of some gigantic hound. Very bad you are, pathetic young thieves of the worst kind, grave robbers, searching out another dark rumor. Ooh, a demon buried 5 centuries, holding a priceless treasure. Let's take it. You should be frightened, but greed does not let you flinch. You delve into his grave, thrilled at the sight of yourselves. Ooh, there's the crumbling, hideous skeleton, crushed by the monstrous jaws what killed it. And clutched in the dead demon's hands, the idol, a crouching winged beast carved from otherworldly green stone. You touch it, you caress its power, you take it for your own. One last glance and steal away home. Now, safe and sound, you place your trophy above the hearth. But then, oh my, your house comes alive. The walls breathe stenched air. The trees dance and clap, mocking your cowardice as they slap the rooftops and windows. Scratching hounds at your door want to come in and play. And in seconds, your friend is torn to ribbons, flayed and shredded before your very eyes. Ooh, no refuge from the unnamed and the unnameable. Oh, your merciful doubt. What has befallen your friend must soon befall you. Bring it back. Ooh. Heaven forgive my folly. I must return the cursed idol to that ancient demonic tomb. Look at you, you bony thing, surrounded by hordes of leering bats, shrieking at me, fangs mocking my doom. I don't remember you as having flesh and hair. I've got your statue. I brought it back here. Just take it. What the? Where did it go? Where did it go? The idol of his image has returned to the dead demon's hands now, where it belongs. Now, you must go where you belong.
The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. Someday, the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up terrifying vistas of reality and of our position therein, that we will go mad from the revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age.
A dread glimpse, the piecing together of separated things. Boxes filled with newspaper clippings, research, notes belonging to my dead uncle, now belong to me. Uncle George was an archaeologist and an obsessed theosophist, studying the esoteric philosophies of nature as they concern the divine, meaning he believed in order to fully comprehend the very knowledge he sought would either kill him or drive him insane. Yet he continued the research, piecing together his unfinished puzzle even to his end. His life's work now filed away in these boxes. I think he intended to destroy them. He meant to keep silent, but silence was never the nature of obsession. I had hoped once myself that no one else would accomplish this piecing out, though by my life I supply a link in this hideous chain. To hear any more of what I have to say, you become a part of that chain, and it will be your end. My great-uncle, George Gamel Angell, Professor Emeritus of Semitic Languages at Brown University, was widely known as an authority on ancient inscriptions, consulting with heads of prominent museums, a mind in demand. He died well remembered, and with great interest. Struck dead by a mysterious man who appeared from nowhere, then disappeared as my uncle drew his last breath. Doctors found no injuries nor bruises. A heart lesion, they decided, was responsible. I no longer believe that. And belief is where it all begins. My uncle plied at my beliefs from childhood. Stories and fables, he swore, were referenced in the dread book, the Necronomicon. Moral lessons from demons, witches, covens, and cults, from the pen of the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred, a trick to lure me into the world of archaeology. I was a willing victim. Now, here lie his beliefs. I continue his research, at first for archaeological publication, hopefully join his notoriety, or perhaps even surpass it. An archaeological dig in the comfort of my own study. My find, my treasures, my uncle's secret papers, his precious life's work. Most curious of all, this strange box, locked by some indefinable contraption until I found this. Disjointed jottings, ramblings, press clippings, and what in this world? My scientific uncle becomes superstitious, developed a personal taste for the hideously grotesque. What twisted and disturbed mind would come up with such a thing? Now, whatever the object are, it obviously disturbed his peace of mind. He sketched every inch of it from every angle. A rectangle less than an inch thick, 5 by 6 inches in area, of modern origin, but the design itself far from modern. Cryptic regularity common in prehistoric writing. Above the hieroglyphics, a figure looms. Pictorial, impressionistic. The execution gives no clear idea of its nature. I mean, is it a monster or some sort of symbol of a monster? An octopus, a dragon, a human caricature? No, that is still not faithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy, tentacled head on a grotesque, scaly body with rudimentary wings. The outline of it, frightful. Behind the figure there are vague suggestions of a cyclopean architectural background. Despite having been through the papers and collections of my uncle, I fail to identify any species, only combinations. I cannot begin to hint at its origin. And in the box, amongst the press clippings, there is a main folder headed Cthulhu Cult, divided into two sections. One, Dream and Dream Study of Henry Wilcox, Providence, Rhode Island, and two, Narrative, Inspector John R. LaGrasse, New Orleans, Louisiana. Other papers and brief notes include clippings about cults, references to myths, outbreaks of group mania, a list of words unknown to me, Shoggoth, Yog-Sothoth, Yig, Migo, Nyarlathotep. Hotep. All of these accounts, clippings, and notes span 33 days from March 1st to April 2nd, but information comes from odd and sometimes nameless sources. March 1st, the day after a great earthquake, a thin, dark young man, neurotic and excited, called on the professor, bringing a singular clay bas-relief sculpture, damp and freshly made by this college design student, Henry Wilcox, an eccentric genius. From childhood, he was known for his strange stories and bizarre dreams. He called himself psychically hypersensitive. Townspeople called him odd. A tortured young soul, Wilcox was beside himself when he spoke with my uncle and presented him with his newly minted art. It is not an ancient relic. It is new. I made it last night from what I witnessed in a dream. A dream of strange cities, dreams of older time, before Babylon, maybe even man. It was a sinister nightmare, filled with latent horror, hovering monoliths with dripping green ooze, hieroglyphics on walls and pillars, and from below, deep inside the earth, a voice, but not a voice, a chaotic sensation. I wrote the letters. It sounded Cthulhu Fatagan, Cthulhu Fatagan. No, that is not quite right. I cannot begin to recreate the sounds as I heard them, guttural, choking sounds. And the letters, I drew them as I dreamt them. Do you know what they mean? What they say? My uncle studied this sculptor, Wilcox, and studied his creation. Recognizing both hieroglyphics and pictorial design, he questioned the source of Wilcox's art, connecting it with strange cults. But the young artist insisted he was only driven to it by his dreams. My uncle collected his dreams, painstakingly logged them. Why was he collecting dreams? Was he dabbling in psychotherapy? He recorded daily calls of the young artist, startling fragments of nightmares, which always included some terrible, colossal vista of dark and dripping stone. Always a subterranean voice or monotonous chanting, uninscribable save his gibberish. The two sounds were constantly repeated, Cthulhu and Eliah. For 3 weeks, the manuscript continues in dated order. March 23rd, Wilcox failed to appear. Stricken with illness, he had gone home to family, his febrile mind dwelling on strange things. No longer in dreams, but now believed he was being stalked by a monster in reality. He did not describe it, save for occasional frantic words, glowing, miles high. A reference to the beast, according to his physician, was always a prelude to lethargy. His temperature was normal, but the condition suggested true fever rather than mental disorder. April 2nd, every trace of Wilcox's malady ceased. He bolted upright in bed, surprised to be home. Wilcox was completely ignorant of dream or reality since the night of March 22nd. All gone. Every trace of strange dreaming gone. Pronounced well, he returned to his normal, odd life. My uncle tried for a week before realizing he was of no more use. The manuscript ends here, but there are references to notes, scattered notes, dreams of several other people. My uncle questioned dozens, asking for nightly reports of their dreams and any notable visions. Reception was mixed, but enough he could scarcely keep up. He formed a significant digest spanning the same 33 days, summarizing the subjects. Average people experienced scattered cases of unrest but formless impressions. Scientific men, most dreamed of strange landscapes, a few felt the dread of something abnormal. Artists and poets, only a third bothered reporting, but they all dreamed Wilcox's dream. The giant, nameless thing attacking, helpless, and unable to scream. A fascinating set of notes, to be sure. Very interesting, but dreams. What do dreams have to do with archaeological studies? Were any of these people puzzled by my uncle's questions? Panic would have broken out had they been able to compare notes. Better that they never knew, free to live out their lives in blissful ignorance. There are additional press clippings from the same time period from all over the world. A rambling letter to a South American newspaper editor with fanatic predictions of catastrophic events of unnameable proportions. In California, a cult dons robes en masse for some prophesied glorious fulfillment which never arrives. In India, items speak of unrest and fierce fighting in temples where deities once provided peace. A painter hangs a blasphemous dream landscape in a Paris salon, sparking violent riots in the streets. Numerous troubles in insane asylums. Non-violent patients suddenly aggressive with superhuman strength, and the typically violent patients turned on themselves in what one newspaper called indescribable horror. A weird bunch of tales, all told. This subject must have been his guilty pleasure. Or simply a train wreck from which he could not avert his attention. A callous rationalism caused me to first set all of this aside. I saw this as some fantastical hoax, or that my uncle had clearly lost his mind, but then I began to study the second folder. Forgive my folly. Uncle George had heard the ominous chanting of Cthulhu long before, had seen outlines of the nameless monstrosity, puzzled over its hieroglyphics some 2 decades prior. His passion first ignited 20 years earlier at the American Archaeological Society's annual meeting. My uncle, Professor Angel, was honored to be keynote speaker. It was there he met a New Orleans police inspector by the name of John Raymond LaGrasse, who brought with him a statuette of unknown origin. LaGrasse was hardly prepared for the sensation he created. One sight of the object sent the assembled men of science into a state of frenzy. They crowded around to gaze at the centuries and even thousands of years seemingly recorded in it. My uncle's notes recall the conversation in copious detail. He was rapt, as were his peers. The inspector's drawling words added to the hypnosis they seemed to have fallen under. I am not here seeking archaeological enlightenment. I want answers. This here statuette, idol, fetish, whatever it is, found it in some wooded swamp south of New Orleans during a raid on a suspected dark cult. More evil than any voodoo circles we have ever seen. And besides the crazy stories we got from some of them, we never got answers that led to anything. And we tried every college, library, what have you. We just want to place the symbol of the thing, you know? Maybe help us track the cult back to its head. Beautiful work. It wasn't so hideous. Some sort of spider monster with an octopus's head made of feelers. Scaly, rubbery looking thing with big claws on its hind feet and long, narrow wings sitting behind a bloated body. Squatted on a block of symbols or some sort of secret writing. The less we figure out, the more scary this thing gets. Nobody can even tell us how old it is. No art college can place it from this time or any other. Even geologists can't tell us what this soapy, greenish black stone is. And these characters, these symbols along the base, just as confounding. This thing seems to stump everybody. And I can tell by the look on y'all's faces, I am gonna be fresh out of luck again. Despite half the world's experts present in a variety of important scientific fields, no one could form any linguistic connection, or any other for that matter. Like the subject and the material, they belonged to something remote and distinct from mankind as we know it. Something suggestive of old and unhallowed cycles of life where our world, our conceptions have no part. A room full of babbling intellectuals, struck mute. But there was one man familiar with the monstrous image and writing, the late William Webb. A professor and explorer of illustrious note was attending the last convention his body would allow him after a half-century of historical research and daring adventures. Uncle George was enthralled. I do not know how you came into possession of this statue, but I knew I would see it again somehow. It was some 40 years ago. I was in Greenland searching for runic inscriptions, which we failed to find, but high up on the coast, we encountered a tribe, an Eskimo cult. Degenerate, some form of devil worship who chilled us to the bone with their bloodthirstiness. And most natives knew little about these cultists, but shuddered at their mention. They would say their practices came down through the ages, before the world was made. Besides mysterious rites and ghastly human sacrifices, they called out to a supreme elder devil, a Turnushook. They danced around an idol, a fetish. When the aurora was high over the ice cliffs, a crude bas-relief of stone, the same hideous image and cryptic writing of the bestial thing you have there. An old wizard priest interpreted the text for me, and I still remember the words, though these are not words per se. Fengli Mglonof Cthulhu Ilyah Waguh Nugul Fatagan. Eskimo wizards in Greenland and Louisiana swamp priests 40 years later chanting to the same idol. It would be 20 more years before there are mass hallucinations in several people's dreams of the same image and the same writing. I cannot ignore the repeating pattern. Fengluim glonof Cthulhu Ilyahwa Gotno Gul Fatagan. That is the same thing they chanted, those cult worshippers in the swamp. A few years ago now, station hasn't stopped buzzing about it to this day. New Orleans police got a phone call from Bayou Country, way south. The land squatters there were being terrorized by some unknown thing appearing to them in the night. They swore that some of their women and children had disappeared right after they started hearing drums. Drums were beating all the time. Now they said in the haunted woods where none of them dared go. Shouting, blood-curdling screams, chanting, dancing, devil flames, and they couldn't take no more. Well, 20 police set out late afternoon with a nervous, shivering squatter as our guide and a half dozen of his fellow transients, scared to let each other out of their sight. Yeah, for miles we joked and laughed off the superstitions as we splashed our way through the cypress woods. A crazy place. You never sees day. And you got to look out for those gnarled roots and the hanging Spanish moss. I mean, pretty and all, but just a haven for every kind of bug. Stones are slick with slime, everything's rotted. Why anyone would want to squat there, I do not know. But they do, and all of them hysterical, all huddled around us still. Like they weren't just scared for their lives, but their souls. Once we finally got them to hush, we could hear the muffled beat of drums or tom-toms way off. And then a screech that just cut right through you every time the wind shifted. And we look off, and it's like a reddish glow is coming from the undergrowth. Not one of those squatters would go another inch. No more guide neither. He wasn't sticking around if his friends were leaving. So on we went to whatever hellish thing this was that was happening out there. Oh, now this place is known for evil traditions you can die for telling. Stories of a hidden lake where this worm-like monster lived with glowy eyes and a dozen arms coming out its mouth. They say swamp folk who worshiped the thing could whisper to bat-winged devils that flew out of caverns at midnight. Something older than the Indians. Even the woods and swamp, a living nightmare, and to see meant you die. Now, part of the story goes it made men dream of some such thing. Well, nobody believed it, but there we were right there in it now. The closer we got, the more superstitious everybody got. Wasn't no more joshing. We could see that the glowing red light was a bonfire, big, and the screaming was echoing through the woods, and we still had a ways to go. Not like human sounds. We thought they had some sort of animal sacrifice. Because it wasn't just pain neither, excitement, something, I don't know, sexual too. Every little bit that the ululating would stop. And then as if some precision chorus took over, except not all of a sudden. And they go to chant that same thing once or twice. Cthulhu, Fatagan, and then go right back to screaming and carry on. As soon as we saw the whole scene, 4 of my men threw up then and there. One fainted. Couple of them just screamed. The cacophony of their orgy drowned it out. We froze. It was horrible. There was this grassy island, maybe an acre big, and these possessed souls leaping and twisting, naked, braying at the moon, dancing around a ring-shaped bonfire. And in the center was this here monolith, a granite thing about 8 feet high, and on top of it, you see a statuette. Well, behind that, hanging 5 stories high from wood scaffolding, these marred bodies of helpless squatters were disappeared, heads downward, what was left of their heads. And these naked, crazy swamp folk just high as kites on it, jumping and roaring all around. Well, they all of a sudden stopped, dead in the air, some of them, I swear. I thought they was coming after us, but they did not stop for us. They stopped to listen. They got an answer. Somewhere deep off in the woods, one of my men Yes, he heard giant wings flapping, saw glowy eyes on some white bulky thing beyond the trees. And of course, he never was quite right after that. As frozen as this evil congregation was, my men were locked with fear, so I yelled and we charged them. 100 mongrel pagans with sticks and arrows. But we had the guns. Still, they fought like wild animals. I have never seen anyone so crazed, and there's so many of them. And we took in 47 of them, made them dress, lined them up in twos to haul back into town. 5 of them were dead. The wounded we carried back, and this here statuette was taken into evidence. Now, most of the men we arrested were sailors, boat workers, and the like. West Indians, Portuguese, a lot of voodoo where they come from, but this was something else entirely. Only 2 of the whole lot were found sane enough to stand trial. The rest were hauled off to institutions. All of them denied any part of the ritual murders. What information we got was from the old man. Castro was his name, and who he's some kind of crazy. And no different than any other low-life criminal, though. He either couldn't or wouldn't take responsibility for what he'd done, or maybe he's just showing up an insanity plea, Said everything he knew he got from some ancient Chinese man who couldn't die, or some such hogwash. Well, it wasn't easy getting him to tell us what those words meant, or anything else for that matter, but you know what they say. We have ways of getting things done. We killed no one, did what was asked of us. We performed the ritual and they come. From the darkness they come and take up the offering. They find it worthy and they feed. Maybe we live one more day. It was for our own defense. The winged ones, they hiding out all over the world in secret places. They go to sleep long time ago, but they showed us a way to call. And when the stars come round again, they come round again. But when the stars ain't right, they dead. But they ain't dead, just asleep. Locked away until the great resurrection. Laying there, waiting, ready. When man come along, they was asleep. So the old ones, they make us dream. They whisper their words into the minds of those who listen. They got to be sensitive, so they can show them how to build their idols, taught secret priests how to call Cthulhu from his grave and wake up the others to rule the world. And when the stars come round again, everyone will be free and wild. No more good and evil, and all the world would flame with ecstasy and freedom and death. Fengui maglono Cthulhu aliamagon gulfatagan. In his house at Elia did Cthulhu waits, dreaming. In his house at Elia did Cthulhu waits, dreaming. Castro cut himself off after that. No amount of persuasion could elicit more, and I am certain the inspector and his dedicated men used any and all means at their own discretion. My uncle's notes recall the conversation. His summation reads as though he were already a convert. Remains of them The winged ones can be found as cyclopean stones on islands in the Pacific. They had come from the stars and brought their images with them. They lay in wait of some outside force serving to liberate their bodies. They will come alive in a world free of laws, morals thrown aside, shouting and killing and reveling in joy. And the old ones will teach new ways to kill and revel. The great stone city, Elia, sunk beneath the waves, cutting off the spectral intercourse, but memory never died. Memories have resurrected my passions. As the old Arab Al-Hazred once wrote, that is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons, even death may die. A cult in the swamps of the Delta. Similar practices by a similar cult thousands of miles away and some 4 decades prior. It would be 20 more years before Wilcox would see his horrendous nightmare. A sculptor, a sensitive, who would have been theoretically more attuned to the supernatural. The same chant, verbatim, well, not verbatim, this cannot be word for word, as these are not words, that my uncle, the admired and studious professor, was giddy by the tales of the sculptor is no surprise. Curiosity held him in its death grip. What thoughts must arise? Utterly ridiculous. My uncle was being had. At that point, I was most certain. But theories are meant to be completely destroyed or thoroughly proven. In honor of my mentor, I felt the need to close this chapter for him, provide for his past project a more reasonable mind, and hopefully dispel some of the rumors that had begun floating in the community since his passing. I would start by shedding light on this ridiculous story, find out how Wilcox knew about my uncle's insane research, and why he felt the need to perpetrate such a mockery. After thoroughly studying the manuscript again and correlating my own set of notes with the cult narrative of Lovecraft, I made a trip to Providence to see the sculptor. A generation of years removed from his crazed youth, Henry Wilcox was now an acclaimed and eclectic, yet reclusive, artist of the macabre. I found Wilcox at work in his room, a room of unsold work. Scattered genius, profound, inspiring, transforming. Awards and accolades had come his way along with concerns for his sanity, but money and livelihood escaped him. Still, the work was breathtaking. He crystallizes in clay, mirrors in marble, nightmares and fantasies that would make Rodin green with envy. Wilcox still lived alone, dark, frail, and unkempt, and still odd. I am aware that my personality and certainly my surroundings put off many people. You may concern yourself with business only. I would not be offended, but relieved. For years, I recall nothing of your uncle, but each and every detail has clawed its way back into my head. I share dreams with your uncle because he could not have any of his own. And yet he never told me why he wanted to know. And I can see that you will keep the secret you now own. Own it proudly. For you see, I am no charlatan. Nothing but pain and suffering came from my experiences. Numeration was never a concern, only peace. Do you still look at me and wonder, waiting proof of what you know is there? Or shall I paint for you dreams in strangely poetic fashion, drug you with my hallucinations, terribly vivid? I can see the slimy green stone in your eyes, sir. You have visions of personal fame, a reward for solving the riddle your uncle has placed upon your shoulder. You dig your way to ancient Arabia. The geometry is all wrong there. You should be so warned. Difficult to sleep with half mental, half animal calling from underground. Cthulhu Fatagan, Cthulhu Fatagan. You relish in delicious knowledge, having no idea you are simply a small and tasteless morsel in a hideous feast. He was right. I craved knowledge, and now I was jealous as well, and excited, and frightened. He had seen the thing. If only in his head he had heard it. If I had further proof, knowledge that he had, not of urban legend, but what might be an international cult. I took great pride in thinking I was on the track of a very real, very secret, and very ancient religion whose discovery would make me, from unknown archaeologist living in the shadow of his eccentric uncle, to great discoverer. And yes, it was frightening to think that this man's evil God, by virtue of his sheer will, his impressiveness, Cthulhu found subconscious expression in Wilcox's dreams. The esoteric's holy grail, whose bent is total, lascivious annihilation. He was only biding his time. His return is inevitable. This first-hand account, albeit only mental, was the closest thing yet I had to proving the existence of what I do not know. The cult was certainly real, far-reaching, and geographically, and with an unfathomable history. But that this beast, whatever it is, could be real. A new species? An extraterrestrial? A living God. There was one other living witness still willing to share his story. The now very aged Inspector Legrasse. I took a trip to New Orleans, talked with Legrasse and others from his account. The only conflict in story was perceptive. The exact size or color, something small might vary, but 4 decades later, they all sang the same tune. And still, locked away in the vaults of open case evidence was the idol Legrasse and his men had confiscated in the swamp some 4 decades prior. And in my final moments with Legrasse, he showed it to me. It is one thing to have doubt and come to some knowledge, but it is a very different thing to experience something like this, not only in its coloring and craftsmanship, but the feel of it. Those on desk duty vowed it never collected dust. It was truly not of this world. I was quite taken with it. And with myself. I had come so far, so fast. Had caught up to my uncle's research, documented its authenticity. I had pocketed the discovery of a religion, a forgotten language. But there was still something about this creature The stories were they had to be based on some form of truth, and perhaps the last of a prehistoric species. I was now searching for a legend. Had anyone alive ever seen it? How does one find an eyewitness to a creature no one has seen? I had exhausted every piece of evidence, but would be nowhere without further proof. I was left to sit in the dark of my own tomb, quietly whispering my questions through the water. Not a true believer, but no longer a skeptic. Calling out to a mythical, sleeping God in some unknown foreign land. Of course, there was nothing. There was nothing for a very long time, except for my own nightmare, which began to rise. My uncle's death, which I had attributed to advanced age and a preference for knowledge over personal health, was far from natural. A dark man in strange and otherworldly clothes appeared out of nowhere, striking my uncle severely. Some saw him, others did not, but all witnessed it. Passers-by first noticed my uncle because of the look of sheer and utter terror on his face, before clutching himself and falling to the ground in what witnesses described as slow motion. His screams were not normal, they said, like a lunatic. The same thing those people were called who swore they saw the dark man and insisted the culprit was whisked away into a mountain, as if invisible hands came from the hillside pulling him into it. No, my uncle documented paranormal deaths and then met one himself. The professor died because he knew too much or would learn more, or lunacy was certainly his next logical step. Have I been searching for a monstrous demon all along, whose followers have global outreach on a telepathic scale? If he doesn't get you, his congregation will. It may take years, but they will find you. And doesn't it stand to reason that in searching for an omnipotent, god-like beast such as this, he might see you first? As logical as I would like to remain, I could not help but feel glowing green eyes studying me. If I find him, has he already been watching me? Who is the lunatic here? I decided to return to reality, to bona fide scientific work. The cataloging of archaeological discoveries, that was the answer. A mind cannot find insanity if it is distracted by tedium. And there would not be enough time to consider the defensive conversations that had begun to affect my reputation. After months of work examining specimens on storage shelves, a rear room of the museum, my eye was caught by a picture, one of the newspapers now relegated to packing material. The Sydney Bulletin, page 7, was folded around a broken skeletal claw, the last bone fragment I would catalog for the day. The yellowed headline rolled out before me from 2 decades prior. Strange idol discovered. 1 survivor, 1 dead, found on armed ghost yacht. The yacht, the Alert, had been a notorious celebrity yacht before being captured by West African pirates. Thought deserted, authorities found 1 half-delirious man and 1 other on board, dead more than a week. The dead man was clutching a green, animal-like stone idol of unknown origin. The Royal Society, the museum, even geologists had found the sculpture to be a monstrous puzzle, each vowing the world held no such rock. They had come from the stars and brought their images with them. The lone survivor of the alert, Gustav Johansen, had been second mate of another ship, the Emma, out of Auckland. And there was the picture. Not of either of the ships, but a photograph of the hellish image again, the idol of unnameable green stone. What a train of ideas it started in my mind. New treasures of data on the Cthulhu cult, evidence that it had strange interests at sea as well as on land, the other side of the world from all other accounts, but correlating with the same dates ascribed to Wilcox's dreams. And now there is an unknown, uncharted island waiting to be named, perhaps hidden away by some geological phenomenon. This is enough to publish. I began to prepare a trip to Auckland and a visit with my third witness. Archaeologists love a fresh dig. I wanted to know how this Gustav Johansen had survived an angry, waking god, had defied the prophecy, to see him is to die. The ports of Auckland held no memory of any pirate cult. A waterfront scum was far too common for mention or given much more than a drifting thought. Johansen, they remembered. His story less ascribed to the supernatural and more a cautionary tale of dealing with unlawfulness at sea. Some theorized the whole story was made up. Johansen was no sailor, but a very cunning thief. Something a harbor town can appreciate and exalt. Gustav was, after all, the lone survivor of both ships. His yellow hair turned white when he had returned to port rescued. He had become a local legend before sailing home to his wife in Oslo. Again, the 2-decade gap repeats. How old was he? Is he now? Oh, I know I must get to Johansen before someone or something got to him first, even if it was merely age that took him. I headed first to London, and then on to the Norwegian capital of Oslo, known during the Crusades as Christiania. Townspeople became very upset when I asked about Johansen. One woman screamed something that loosely translated into "do not invite devils," before slamming her windows closed. Johansen's wife was a sad-faced woman in black. I would be denied an interview with my lone eyewitness. I had missed Johansen by only a few weeks. Gustav gone. The sea break him. Hard, very weak. The sea break it. He say nothing, but I see he is broken. She showed me his writings, titled Technical Matters, every word in English, most likely to protect his wife. I convinced her that his technical matters were very important to the scientific community. Though reluctant at first, she smiled and seemed satisfied that her husband had left something for the world's benefit. I devoured his post facto diary on my trip home. This was no piece of conceived art. This was not stories from his worshippers. Gustav Johansen had been an uninvited guest of Elia, Cthulhu's home, and had somehow escaped with his damaged soul. And what an age-old cult had failed to do by design, a band of innocent sailors had done by accident. The Emma felt the full force of an earthquake, and this created a tempest, which heaved up from the bottom of the sea the worst nightmares of any sailor could dream. He survived only to be attacked by the alert. He said to be protecting the island, but there was no island there. These men were ruthless with psychotic rage. Lunatics. Their destruction seemed almost a duty. No one wishes to kill a man, I would think, but these men wanted this very thing. We survived. 8 of the Emma's crew were left standing when it was over. We commandeered the Alert. We looked out over the water and we could see a great stone pillar rising out of the sea, surrounded by coastline. We found the shore to be all mud, ooze, and the thick seaweed of a size I have never seen before. And the buildings there, they were not of this world, not that I know. West Angle's very big. Some of the men were very excited as there would be food here and now, maybe gold or some trinkets, or maybe even pretty native women. But something was not right. We could feel this. We did not say anything. We were questioning everything, but we said nothing. The geometry, the land, and what we see did not make sense in this place. We were so confused, so struck by this, we did not consider danger. Even the sun was distorted, different. Something lives here. We could feel this. Something that is wrong. Something was speaking to us in our heads, not of any language, none that I know, but it was there. We came across a clearing of trees and we saw green blocks which made for a giant pedestal for a devil statue. The same one we found in the hands of the pirate, the very last one to die. He would not let go of it even in death. Bryden had to pry it from his hands to keep for himself. This one was several times larger. We climbed past, or perhaps over the green blocks. This was no normal staircase, not of this mortal world. The angles, the rocks had been carved. At first they point inward, but on second look, they point out. We are looking around for a souvenir, for proof of what we are seeing. Behind the great shining pedestal, we came across an immense carved door, like a barn door. It lay flat, like a trap door, but it was also like a cellar, slanted. Now we cannot tell which way is up, which way down. I have never felt this before, but the darkness was alive. There was so much blackness, a thing itself, you could feel it, even though the sun was still there. Some of the men, they pushed on the door in several places, with no effect. And then they only brush it with their hands, very delicately, along the edges. A gigantic barrier gave inward toward the top, moving diagonally. All of the rules of nature were upset. Wrong. Oh, the door must not have been open for centuries. A hideous blackness crawled out like smoke and melted into the sky. Oh, the smell was intolerable. And then a sound from below. Nasty. And very big. Whatever it is, it climbed into sight, squeezing itself through the black doorway. Huge, and every part of this giant thing is moving. This mountain was walking. It stumbled in front of us, shrieking. Oh, I thought my ears would burst. It was as if a giant octopus was crawling out of its face, and its arms were dripping greenish black ooze from sharp hands, claw-like, but the skin was made of many rocks and razors, maybe. 2 of the men died of fright, fell over and died, and the rest cried, some with tears, others cried for mercy. Protect me from this thing of idols! He looked up. He saw a ring of stars in a perfect circle. They shone over the creature's head like a giant halo out in the universe. The monster stepped into it like it was his crown. We were moved from our feet by the rush of air. 3 men were swept up by his claws before we could run. One of the men slipped on the green crusted rock at an angle that should not have been there. We either stabbed him or swallowed him up. I could not tell. Only Bryden and me reached the boat as this heaving monster flops down the slimy stone behind us and then hesitates at the edge of the water. I can still see him, but I do not look. I cannot look at this distorted horror giant demon standing at the sea. I got the alert churning out of these terrible waters which were bubbling up from the sea below. And the monster, now many stories high, slid down like grease, melting into the water. And I am thinking, he is going to swim after us. Bryden looked back, then became insane, laughing maniacally, not stopping until death answered his begging many nights later. I took a terrible chance. The alert at full speed would maybe not get us away. He could be gaining on us. I reversed the wheel. Let the steam mount as it foamed in the seawater. I released the alert with all that was in her. I steered her straight away into this giant thing that was rising out of the sea. I drove the ship into its head. There was a bursting, exploding flesh, nastiness, the smell of 1,000 open graves, and then a horrible sound. For a moment, the ship was in a blinding green cloud, and I am thinking, I have run aground, or I have run aground on him, or in him. I hear venomous seething. Heaven help us. The monster. His head was now scattered across the water, broken apart. But now it was starting to reform. I sped away without looking back. Bryden's terrorized, laughing and screaming had taught me this much. If I look, I will go insane or die. If I look, it will catch me. And though I no longer see it, I still see it. Always. When they found the alert and towed us back to port, they did not see this island or any rock in the water, and they begin to question me whether I am crazy. Maybe I am. I believe it has followed me home. That was all. As far as he had gotten. Now, as far as he would go. Mrs. Johansson had said her husband came back missing his soul. Or perhaps it was drowned out by the calls for his faithful to answer him. They must pay with their lives for seeing him, for knowing him. Gustav had not survived the prophecy after all. Why hesitate at the water? Trapped and not yet fully awake, tired from the chase, and someone fought back. Gustav struck back and got away for a while. Was it Cthulhu or his henchmen that killed him, or simply the fear of unending wrath? And with these questions, so ended my pilgrimage of liberation and restoration. The stories align from different regions, from different decades, eyewitness accounts and physical proof. At first I suspended disbelief. But now the only suspense is not knowing when. The most frightening of all, the unknown. I am a marked man. I simply do not know the hour. Cthulhu is coming for me. For all of us, when the time is right, and the time is now. The stars are taking their hideous formation as I speak. In my final preparations, I will place these documents in this box, along with the bas-relief and the papers of Professor Angel. With it shall go this record of mine, this test of my own sanity, the piecing together that which I hope may never be pieced together again. I have seen horror. Spring skies and flowers are now poison to me. And my gift of life will not be long. As my uncle went, as Johansen went, so shall I go. The stars are right again. Cthulhu lives again. He sleeps, else the world would be screaming. Cthulhu vertagen. Cthulhu rises. Loneliness waits and dreams in the deep, and decay spreads over the tottering cities of men. The calls to his faithful grow louder, and his accursed city begins to rise. His ministers on earth bellow and dance and kill. There is a special place in the mind of Cthulhu for those who seek him out. He will devour them more viciously and with greater contempt. The most pain is reserved for the likes of me. But there is one way to alleviate the pain. Perhaps lessen it. Pray, make it quicker. Ia! Fengli Maglonov Cthulhu Ilyach Wagono Gulfatagen. I have no choice but to provide a sacrifice. It will not please him, for nothing can appease an alien god of wrath and destruction. It only serves to pacify him, provide a brief distraction. The more you know of Cthulhu, the more violent your death will be, and you now know of him. Rest assured, it is better this way. For if you survive tonight, you will wish you had not. Soon, everything and everyone you know and love will be gone, or horrendously changed into indescribable horror. Massive death and destruction. Hordes of insane screams rippling over seas of blood and bodies. Madness rides the star winds. Claws and teeth sharpened on centuries of corpses. Dripping death astride a bacchanal of bats from night-black ruins of buried temples. The abomination of desecration. Now, as the baying of that dead, not dead green monstrosity grows louder and louder, and the accursed whirring flapping of those web-clawed wings draw closer and closer. I point him to you, for his time has come. His time is now. Fengli Magronov Cthulhu Eliach Wagon Gul Fatagen. Iyo!